Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Don't forget to like and subscribe at infotainmentwars.com. That's or if you're more in the Twitch-leaning world, you can go to twitch.tv/HalSparks, or you can get there really quickly by going to fwank.com, FWANQ.com. I grabbed it before Mike Pillow could. So I don't know if you listen carefully, if you use a glass up against the hotel wall, or you find a shell laying in, I don't know, the middle of the highway, sure. you hold it up to your, that sound you will be hearing is the sound of right-wing talking points dying. We've been hearing these things keel over for the last 3 weeks. They had them, man. Remember, hey, the border was a disaster. Millions of people were storming across the border. There's no way to, and now, yeah. Lumber prices. Hey, come on. Lumber is out of control until it drops 40% in a single day, and then 30% the next day to a 70%, to lower than they were to pandemic prices. But okay. You know, like all these setups. So one of the big ones, besides woke, is a woke attack. Oh no, critical race theory woke attack. Right, that's the other one. That's the new gay marriage, by the way, just in case you're keeping score.
Oh yeah.
There's a big leaderboard, like the John Wick assassination pool, where they just slide it out of the way and put that name up there. Like, all right, let's get all right. Move over, Tea Party. We got to put this slide. We slide this in. So, one of the big talking points, of course, is that they're trying to give white people a bad name. The Biden administration is just anti-white, and one of the ways they're pushing it is because the allegedly, if you listen to Dan Bongino or Don Jr. or Tucker Carlson, who, by the way, dropped his whole NSA spying thing in 24 hours, that came and went, right? I mean. And by the way, my theory...
Wait, when did I miss the whole thing?
Oh, yeah. That's how small it was. 2 days of Tucker Carlson is being spied on by the NSA, and the NSA tweeting back, yeah, we don't care about Tucker Carlson. And people going, but he could have been. And then that's it. Basically, Glenn Greenwald ends up on Jimmy Dore going, it totally is happening. And it's not happening. But that my theory is that there are some awful emails between... Tucker Carlson and his former head writer, the guy who was writing anti-Semitic, anti-gay, anti-black stuff on websites under a pseudonym, got fired when it was discovered. And there's some emails between him and his ex-buddy, who he can't not have known was running that account and posting those kind of things, because they talked all the time. He was his head writer, crafted all of his opening monologues with him. They were together all the time. There's no way that if Brad Giori, bless his heart, great guy and great writer, who was my head writer on Talk Soup, there is no way in the amount of time he and I hung out throwing jokes back and forth at each other that if he was a secret white nationalist, I would not have spotted a couple of jokes coming my way and gone, wait a minute, back up. What was that thing about the Rothschilds you wanted to put it? You know what I mean? Like it would have come up, right? There's just no way. So my guess is that there's a bunch of NSA, that there's a bunch of emails between him and this dude, and he's going to blame the NSA for hacking his emails because somebody at Fox News or something is going to leak them eventually because they can't stand him, and that, no, run-of-the-mill, your circle turning on you stuff, and he's going to blame it on the NSA, right? So. Anyways, so one of the big talking points that they've been addressing lately is that Joe Biden and Merrick Garland and everybody thinks that white nationalists, white supremacists are the biggest threat to America. This is the phrase you'll hear. They're the biggest threat. That's the biggest threat. Not Al-Qaeda, not ISIS, not foreign terrorists, but white supremacy, militia groups and other groups are the biggest threat to America. And they will play clips without irony, where Merrick Garland, Joe Biden, others have said that white supremacists represent the biggest racial superiority domestic terror threats currently, which is a big subcategory of domestic terror threats, right? I mean, beyond lone wolf factors, Syrian separatist cell groups operating in, Tulsa, Oklahoma. I don't know. Like, there's all these subgroups that they deal with. But the biggest one by volume is white supremacist militia groups. In this subcategory of subcategories, that's the biggest one we're talking about in terms of, and that is also the group that brought us the likes of Timothy McVeigh. So when they do strike, it's a big deal. And it's not so much that they're the ones running around gunning people down, it's that they're the ones planning for something big.
Yeah.
And so the ones that are running around gunning people down and causing a lot of trouble are noisy, easy to arrest. They are dangerous, but they're dangerous to smaller groups of people overall. But the Timothy McVeighs of the world are a big concern because, U-Haul truck fertilizer bomb, much bigger problem than random open carry guy who decides today's the day, right? And while that guy is a threat, he's on the list, but he's like sixth because he's by himself and he's not talking on WhatsApp with members of the former Trump administration. That, you know what I'm saying? Like that's why, right? So, now what they keep missing. Granted, it becomes like the world's shortest NBA player or the world's tallest giant or whatever, like the subcategory of subcategories. That while white supremacist militia groups are the number one racial superiority domestic terrorist threat in the United States currently, they're not alone. And number 3 is black supremacist groups. Interestingly enough, there's a secondary, I think it's like there's white supremacy, and then there's what would be like the Western chauvinist kind of Proud Boys groups, which technically include Hispanics and black people, so they technically can't be racial superiority groups, even though the upper echelon might be the end game Charles Manson style, the whole, yeah, right. So there's 3 categories. The third one is black supremacist groups. And it's for the longest time, it's been the Black Hebrew Israelites who, if you've never seen them, if you've ever been to Philadelphia, sometimes you'll see them on the corner with yelling at Jews and screaming anti-gay epithets at people, wearing what looks like cosplay nativity last-minute costumes. Like, I had no idea this was a nativity party. I ran by Party City and got some tablecloths, and I just whipped this together. I hope it's okay. And so they stand out there just saying awful, and they're they've been linked to other more violent things. Like one of the Black Hebrew Israelites is the guy who shot 2 Jews in I think it was in Brooklyn or the Bronx. I confused my New York boroughs. Last year, or maybe 18 months ago. But that story, remember, he walked in and it was, it was just kind of a random shooting. That guy, he was with that group. He was also, they were also the group that were talking to the Covington Catholic kids with the Nathan Phillips drumming thing, right? And Nathan Phillips assumed that because it was white kids with red hats on, that they were obviously the instigators, and that these dudes who were screaming anti-gay, anti-Catholic, anti-religious epithets at these kids, that it was an imbalanced thing. Clearly the red hats were the sign, whatever. Anyway, so that kind of back and forth. So they were the top worry in a lot of ways. They've been brushed aside by another group, and we're already at the break. We got to take a break. When we come back, I'm going to tell you about the new group and how they actually have a lot of similarities with some of the fringe white supremacist group. If only they could get along, they could actually be real trouble.
Right? They can get some real things done.
Yes, right. I mean, can't they all just not get along with everyone else together? All right, we'll be back.
Exactly. More hands make less work.
That's right. We'll be back. I don't even know how to get into this. It's so weird. All right, so couple of weeks, maybe last week? Yeah. So last week, there's this story that comes across my news feed that's super fun. Now, I've been watching with some level of bemusement since the Bundy clan got a lot of news for not wanting to have to pay for grazing rights on land everyone shares for grazing that the government owns.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And the kind of tacit sovereign citizen movement that floats around. Like I said, this is your lone wolf factors. This is these weird like low-end natural-born killers, couples that seem to drive all around the country with no plates on their car, going, this is my country. I've declared my car the kingdom of Swareria, and I am its queen, right? Like, ma'am, get out of the car, please. You have an open container, and there's a needle in your arm. I'm concerned, right? I have the right to do whatever. All right, so that's that group, or lack of group. I don't quite know how you gather together in a sovereign gathering of non-sovereign citizens. If all of you are each and of themselves their own country, it's very weird. So
I wonder if you do it with like those. Have you ever seen those team building like beach ball things?
Yeah.
You get inside and you've got
everybody runs
this
inside
big cushion globe around you.
Right. Yeah. And everybody race to the bridge and back. Okay, I'm gonna fall down.
Trying to knock each other silly.
Yeah. Everybody gets 1 week at the timeshare. So so there was this story that came out about this woman's house that was seized by this couple that just claimed it as their own. Now it's this woman's house. She was not home at the time. And because of, I think maybe because of COVID, she was staying at her other house, or whatever it is. But this couple just seized her house and claimed it as like property of Morocco, right?
Yeah, man.
Yeah. So
I'm waiting for the weird part.
Yeah, what's that? So a U-Haul truck shows up at this house. They start loading their furniture in, and they put a sign in the window claiming that the house now belongs to them, and they changed the locks. So the police had to break the locks to get in. These folks, the couple claimed rights to a mansion for sale in Rock Creek Park earlier in the same month. So they're basically going around and claiming properties. If no one's in them at the time, they just say, this is it. Hang a Moroccan flag in the window, say it's ours, it's now sovereign land, and that's it. Okay, so weird story. Needless to say, they got arrested, and goodbye, right? Okay. But these folks, they were charged with misdemeanor unlawful entry and released pending a court date, and were ordered to stay away from the home. They failed to appear for the court date from the last house. After the latest incident, the judge ordered them held without bail in jail. They are again charged with unlawful entry, but also face failure to appear in court charges. Owner of the home near Rock Creek Park said prosecutors are planning to add more serious charges when the couple appears before a judge next week. A similar incident took place in 2013 when Lamont Butler moved into a vacant mansion in Bethesda, Maryland. He said his religious beliefs as a member of the Moorish nation entitled him to the home. The police disagreed. Moorish American nationals believe black Americans are descendants of an ancient Moroccan empire. Most members are law-abiding citizens, but a splinter group believes their ancestors were here before. That's called the Rise of the Moors. That's the splinter group, by the way.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just to clarify.
Every time I hear the Moors, I think of American Werewolf in London.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Or the Moors.
Or the Hound of the Baskervilles, something along those lines.
Sure.
Or some lines from True Romance. So, if you know what I mean. Today, some people are under misconception and erroneous notion that the Moorish Science Temple...
About that. Dennis Hopper?
Yes, right. Well, no, it was Christopher Walken get on the receiving end.
On the receiving end?
Yes. Today, some people are under the misconception and erroneous notion that the Moorish Science Temple of America, Inc., which is good, I'm glad it's incorporated, is a place where one can learn how to forego their civic duty of paying taxes, obtain their straw man, and assert their so-called sovereignty, etc. The Moorish Science Temple of America said in a January statement in July 2015, "We assertively declare that the Moorish Science Temple of America, Inc. is no form or fashion a sovereign citizen movement or a tax protester movement. Consequently, our teachings are diametrically opposed to that ideology." Except when they ain't, because if you go to the site, it's actually... It does cost you $50 to apply to join. And your skin color is necessary to that. So it has to be a private organization. You have to pay to join so that they don't get caught in this problem where you have a bunch of, like, odd white supremacists joining just to mess with the whole thing, right?
I'm still interested. Keep going.
I'm
still listening.
And I looked up how to sign up for it. Anyways, so this morning, there's this standoff in the Massachusetts highway where two cars are pulled over on the side of the road with their hazards on, pouring gas into their gas tanks from containers that they had, and a police officer pulled over and said, "Can I help you?" And all of them were dressed in fatigues and carrying long rifles. And he was like, "Oh, hi, where are you guys going? What you doing?" And they said, "We don't have to tell you." And a bunch of them ran off into the bushes. So, which is not.
Do we know why they had to stop and gas up with their hazards on?
Yes, we do.
Did they want attention?
No, because they didn't want attention. Interestingly enough, they didn't want to stop at gas stations because they were trying to avoid as many
to be
stops.
Seen by the cameras.
Yes, because they were going to a place to quote unquote train. Now, again, this is where it gets into the part where concern comes in, because this gets into the militia planning for a Oklahoma city building zone. That's where it becomes worrisome. Now, all these guys had to do, I mean, this is how it reads. The group says on their website they're dedicated to, quote, educating new Moors and influencing our elders. In YouTube videos of the incident, they claim they're only traveling peacefully to their, quote, private land to camp and train. Their private land, by the way, because of their website, could be anyone's house. So that's a little weird. But according to Massachusetts State Police, troopers saw two cars side of the road, 2 a.m., hazards on, attempting to add gas to their tanks. Officers stopped to assist, said they were wearing military gear, had a lot of guns, asked for driver's licenses. Gun licenses, men allegedly refused to provide any and refused to put down their weapons. Trooper called for backup. Some of the men fled, and then they live streamed the whole thing, and then they shut down the street, and then they held up flags and whatever. Okay. Let's just be abundantly clear. All religious beliefs aside, this is a conspiratorial group of dum-dums who have gone rogue in their own rogue group. So there's a sub-rogue third-tier group of roguishness going on in this roguiness that is right up there with the Bundys pointing sniper rifles at federal cops, thinking they have a right to graze on public land that everyone pays taxes to maintain, so that grazing land doesn't get overgrazed, so that everybody's cattle doesn't die, because that was the problem that was without a solution a long time ago, and we came up with one. The amazing thing about all this, and the sovereign citizens and the wish we could go back to a kind of Wild West mentality that the Republicans party has currently, that things were simpler. Well, yeah, when things were simpler, a lot more people got killed randomly.
Yeah.
Lynching was the law of the land. And as your freedoms freedom until, and simple until it ain't. That's the problem.
Yeah.
It's simple until a small war breaks out that nobody else is participating in. Because that's the biggest concern with these militia groups, with the Moorish groups, with the Black Hebrew Israelites, with the Aryan Nation, with the Ku Klux Klan, with any of these, subgroups that believe in this kind of, hyper-individual freedom, that the Constitution exists to create this perfect individual freedom that is somehow devoid of responsibility to the laws that also exist in the Constitution, like everybody else's freedom not to catch a stray bullet by some lunatic playing war in the woods with their buddies. I don't need a hunting license. I just, and if you're, I believe orange, my religion tells me orange vests are a perfect target. Like that, at a certain point, buzz off is the only answer. And that's what a lot of these folks are experiencing in court. And they get a buzz off first, and then the second or third time they try it, they end up in jail. And they're like, I don't believe this jail is real. Like, enjoy being the sovereign. You are a sovereign.
Yeah, how does that work after a while?
Yeah, the kingdom of A146297 prisoners out. You are the king of your own clothes. Congratulations. But the ever-growing rise of groups like this within the context of believing that they can be their own citizens beyond, that they can create their own reservations like they're indigenous Americans spontaneously in any house, hotel, gas station they incur. So every place they view as a fallback position is lunacy. But like the sovereign citizen movement that you see, a lot of these folks, when pushed to their absolute now tell me what happens after this happens. And what happens if you get pulled over?
Mhm.
Well, I don't do anything. Well, you can't block a freeway, so what if they push your car out of the way? Well, that I have a gun for that. Like that, it always ends up in someone shooting cops or soldiers and trying to water the
Yeah.
tree of liberty with
That is
patriots.
always the end game. And I've got
Right.
this gun because I will protect myself against this tyrannical government or
Right.
run into the woods.
Right. And the tyranny of the government is we really should license people who are behind the wheel of a 6,000 pound device that can go 110 miles an hour. That's the tyranny
Yep.
that they're fighting against. That we got to know that you took a class and you know what you're doing before you get out on the highway. Whatever you want to drive it around your own property in a circle, knock yourself out. You know what I mean? You don't need a license for an ATV on private property. Go for it. But you can't drive it on the highway, dum-dum. So these folks, there's a big concern with those folks, and I want to explain how there's a, my talking about the kind of Russian smash and grab stuff and the ties to this kind of conspiratorial nonsense and the flood of this on the internet bloviating these idiots into thinking on all sides of this that somehow they have ground that is theirs never to cede under the envelope of the pure American, which is really, really crazy.
Yeah.
Is based on largely folding fiction. Like the Turner Diaries drove Timothy McVeigh to do what he did. There's a similar thing that the Moorish sovereign citizens believe that comes from a fiction novel in the 60s. We got to take a break. When I come back, I want to mention this, and then I want to recognize this is how far it goes into that realm. And if it wasn't for the availability of weapons everywhere and the ease of it, this wouldn't be a point of concern. This would have been people smoking pot in the 60s talking to each other across a table trying to figure out how to make a pipe bomb and doing themselves in. But it's a different game now. We'll be back. So this is I'm going to channel my inner Rachel Maddow for this or whatever. In 1968,
Do it.
the African-American novelist John A. Williams published his third novel, The Man Who Cried I Am. By the way, last three letters of the words in the title are CIA, just saying. The Man Who Cried I Am, a bitter, beautiful, and feverish depiction of the failed promises of the civil rights era. The novel, which was a bestseller and went through 6 printings, narrates the lives of 2 writers, one of whom, Max Reddick, is a journalist whose career path resembled Williams' own. So he's basically... think of this as sort of the Black Fountainhead in some ways. Like he's writing kind of an Ayn Randian novel for to some degree the black segregationist movement post 60s. They didn't like the fact that the civil rights era had actually had some wins in it, and that it was a movement towards the reconciliation and people coming together. They were they were upset about anti-miscegenation laws being overturned, so that black and white people could be married, or people of different races could be married in the country, specifically that way. So, anyways, so the novel's other central character is this character, Harry Ames. He's a celebrated black American writer of social protest fiction who so closely resembled Richard Wright that the lawyers at Little, which is the publishing company, Little Brown, expressed some concerns that the author's estate would sue. And hold on, open back up, crazy. Now, as Williams recalled it, he lost the fellowship after... Okay, so there was... The Man Who Cried I Am is a novel about the kind of paranoia that proves to be entirely justified, a theme that culminates in its penultimate chapter in which Harry, living in self-imposed exile in Paris, dies under suspicious circumstances. Before his death, we learn that he recently discovered a briefcase containing, quote, the King Alfred plan. And anybody who watches Alex Jones can see the white supremacist movement, the Turner Diaries movement, the seeds of this kind of there's really this thing. I don't know. There's a plan. We found these papers, and they in this briefcase. That kind of story, which were written about in something else, but somebody types them up from a novel, and then they end up looking like real stuff, getting presented as real evidence in somebody else's book, which is also referenced in a second book, and then somebody's like, this has to be real, even though the original source is fiction, right? We've seen this a dozen times on Alex Jones. This is just a new version of it, right? So the King Alfred plan was a series of leaked documents in the book, fictional leaked documents outlining the measures the U.S. government would adopt if the racial unrest and discord of the mid-1960s turned into civil war. So if there was a black uprising, is the theory. An emergency that would involve all, quote, all 22 million members of the minority. The minority has adopted an almost military posture to gain its objectives, which are not clear to most Americans, which is in this fake plan is what the CIA is thinking about minorities in the preparation of the fake plan that they're not actually thinking at the time. Right. So, like, it gets really weird when you read about the reading of it because it sounds like they're referencing real stuff, you know, but this is dead on Alex Jones-ish kind of things, you know. It is expected, therefore, that those objectives are denied the majority, to deny the minority. Racial war must be considered inevitable, that the black people are going to rise up the minute you don't let them have sovereign citizen territory or whatever it is. The plan, which was named after the first Anglo-Saxon king of England, because that's how the CIA works, of course, detailed how the government would terminate once and for all the minority threat to the whole American society and indeed, quote, free the world. So Nazi-level, Goebbels type ultimate solution, wiping out all black people in the United States. This is the King Alfred plan in this thing. In the first draft of the novel, Williams unveiled the Alfred plan in what his editor, Harry Science, described as a James Bondish note. There was just a note in there about the King Alfred. Well, this is what it would be. And he found it in the briefcase, among other stuff. His editor said, well, that's not believable. Nobody's going to buy this. He said it wasn't quite convincing. The reader has to feel it could be true, so he had him go draft up what the actual plan would be. And so he wrote up 6 fake pages to this thing and inserted them in the novel as this is what was found. Right? So Williams designed 6 pages to imitate classified government documents, which included a memo from the National Security Council rationalizing the plan, a crude map from the Department of Interior highlighting the regions where the minority would be detained, and a bullet-pointed timetable from the Secretary of Defense outlining how the minority would be subject to vaporization techniques or deported to Africa. Vaporization. Yeah, Jewish space lasers, I think, probably the best use of those. In the novel's final chapter, Max reads the plan over the telephone to a black nationalist named Minister Q. Dun, dun, dun. A stand-in for Malcolm X, you think? Urging him to revolt against the state. Max's discovery writes, in the final pages of the novel, gave form and face and projection to American racism. His worst suspicions were finally confirmed. Here's where it gets weird. Williams, the author, worked in PR for a time. He was a PR writer, wrote copy. And he wanted, as a way to promote this, he wanted the publisher to take out a full-page ad in the Times and put a page from the plan in there as, look what we found. Not saying it was an ad, not saying it was fake, not saying it was part of a novel, as sort of the early Batman things where they were just putting Batman symbols on, on billboards before you knew the movie was coming out, that kind of stuff. And so he wanted them to do this, and they were like, yeah, no, that's dangerous and lunatic.
Like War of the Worlds stuff.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to drive people to shoot people, and no. Mm-hmm. And he got mad, so he asked for multiple copies of it, of the pages to be printed by them, on cool paper. And he put them in manila envelopes and left them on New York subways and sent them to people like Dick Gregory and other, black activists that he thought were important. Again, not telling him that he had faked it. Not going, hey guys, this is part of my new novel. This is a little thing or whatever. If you want to kind of, no. And he mailed it out to everybody. And then, like I said, left them all over New York. Like it was a 9 Inch Nails album on a thumb drive. And now that plan is referenced on the Rise of the Moors website. The Rise of the Moors, these people who blocked the road and claimed sovereign citizen are claiming houses are for themselves as their own land, are referencing the reasoning for doing this is the King Alfred plan. And this is this, by the way, the parallels between this and the sovereign citizens who believe that the prescience of Atlas Shrugged and that there really is a hollowed out mountaintop in, outside of Denver where people pay for stuff with gold coins like John Wick.
Oh boy.
It's a direct parallel with these two groups. And it's the amazing part, the big fear was that if they ever got together, and this is where we go, thank God for racism, because if both of these groups didn't hate each other at sight, we'd have to worry about it. So today, racism has done something good. It has separated multiple lunatic groups from joining together and overthrowing the government. I mean, wow. And these folks are armed, still around, and there's lots of them. Just so you know. But they're third on the list under the white supremacist groups. We'll be back.